Okay, so this time around, you've sent over a really fascinating collection of articles and research,
Yeah.
really like diving deep into what's driving both success and failure for businesses, looking ahead to 2025.
Right.
We've got it all, it seems like, from those big economic trends to very specific case studies.
hmm
A pretty hefty stack of reading, to be honest.
It is. It is.
But, having gone through all of it,
Yeah.
a really clear picture has emerged.
Wow.
And it's something that I think is just so crucial for anyone, really anyone who's involved in business, even just interested in business, to understand.
I agree.
So really what we want to do in this deep dive
Right.
is try to synthesize all of this incredible information,
Yeah.
pinpoint, like what is the single biggest reason why businesses are stumbling, why they're
Yeah.
failing,
Mm.
and then perhaps even more importantly, what can anyone listening
Right.
actually do about it to avoid that same fate?
Absolutely.
And you know what the headline here, the undeniable top takeaway from all these sources, is honestly pretty eye-opening.
I think so.
Both U.S. Bank and CB Insights are reporting that a staggering 82% of business failures in 2025
Wow.
can be traced back to one core issue: cash flow mismanagement.
Yeah.
82%.
That's huge.
That's not just a significant factor, that is the overwhelming dominant factor.
Yeah, it really is.
So if you are running a business, if you're dreaming of starting one,
Right.
even if you're just trying to get a grasp on what's happening in the economic landscape,
Mm-hmm.
this is crucial information.
It really is. I mean, cash flow truly is the lifeblood of any business.
That's true.
When we talk about cash flow, we're really just talking about the movement of money in and out of the business.
Right.
It's that flow that allows you to cover those operating costs, pay your employees,
Yeah.
and invest in new opportunities, invest in growth.
That makes sense.
And without healthy cash flow, even the most brilliant, the most innovative business model
Right.
is going to eventually, inevitably, come to a grinding halt.
It's almost counterintuitive, isn't it?
It-
That this foundational element,
Yeah.
the actual flow of money,
Uh-huh.
is what brings down the vast majority of businesses.
Right.
You would think that it would be like priority number one
You would think.
for anyone starting a business, running a business.
You think so?
So the big question then, the one we really need to kind of grapple with here,
Yeah.
is why?
Why does this happen?
Why does this happen?
Yeah.
Why is it that so many entrepreneurs seem to overlook, underestimate
Mm-hmm.
cash flow until it's too late?
Right.
What's
Yeah.
behind this widespread oversight?
Okay, well, let's really dig into that.
Right.
Why, the sources you've pulled together highlight several interconnected reasons for
Mhm.
why cash flow mismanagement is such a dominant issue.
Okay.
The first, and it's a remarkably common trap, is
Yeah.
this overconfidence in revenue projections.
Right.
And it's fascinating how that optimism bias we
Yeah.
often see, especially with founders, can really blind them to the very real costs and the slower than anticipated sales cycles
Mhm.
that plague even the best ideas, even the best business models.
It's that classic entrepreneurial spirit, isn't it?
It is.
Like that belief in your vision, that passion,
Right.
which is so essential, so important to get anything started.
Yeah, for sure.
But it sounds like what you're saying is it can sometimes lead to, maybe, a bit of wishful thinking when it comes to crunching those numbers.
It can. It can.
You see those projected sales figures, and they're just going straight up.
Yeah.
But maybe you haven't fully accounted for the time it takes to actually acquire customers
Right.
or all those inevitable marketing expenses.
Yeah, it happens all the time.
Yeah.
Businesses overestimate how quickly they'll gain traction.
Okay.
And they often underestimate the true ongoing costs of actually running their operations.
Makes sense.
This leads to budgets that just aren't realistic,
Right.
that don't leave much of a buffer. When actual performance deviates, as it often does, from those rosy predictions,
Right.
it's like building a bridge with insufficient supports.
Oh, okay.
It might look fantastic on paper, but it won't hold up under pressure.
So true.
Yeah.
And speaking of pressure, another major contributor, something I know so many business owners grapple with,
Yeah.
is delayed payments.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, we've all been there,
I have.
waiting for an invoice to be paid. It's frustrating on a personal level,
Uh-huh.
but for business, those delays can really snowball into some serious problems.
Absolutely. Absolutely. When your customers take longer to pay those invoices than you expected,
Right.
it has a direct, immediate impact on your own ability to meet your financial obligations.
Right, because you've still got to cover everything.
You do. You
Your rent, utilities, payroll.
hmm
it doesn't stop coming just because someone's late on a payment.
Right.
And if those incoming funds are delayed,
Yeah.
you can very quickly find yourself in a liquidity crunch.
Yes. Yeah.
And remind me, that's the situation where you have assets.
Yeah.
You've made sales.
You've done the work.
You've done the work.
But you don't have the liquid cash on hand.
Right, to pay those immediate debts.
Right now, yeah.
Right.
And this can happen even to businesses that fundamentally have a very sound business model.
Wow, okay.
Yeah.
So it's not just about the model itself.
It's
about managing that flow.
the flow is critical.
Then there are those unexpected curveballs.
Oh, yeah.
The things you just can't anticipate, can't see coming.
Right.
Like, I don't know, the proverbial leaky roof, a sudden spike in material costs.
Right.
Some unforeseen legal issue that pops up.
Exactly.
Exactly.
You know, whether it's a critical piece of equipment breaking down,
Yeah.
a legal challenge, a lawsuit, or even broader market disruptions that just out of the blue increase your costs. These unplanned expenses, they can be a real drain on your reserves.
I bet.
Especially if you haven't been proactive. You know, if you haven't built up that safety net.
Right.
Think about, let's say, a restaurant, very common example, but a restaurant whose refrigerator suddenly fails.
Oh, yeah.
That is a significant immediate cost that they now have to cover.
Yeah.
And they're also potentially losing revenue because they can't operate at full capacity.
Right. They can't serve customers without, refrigeration.
They can't.
So it's a double whammy.
Exactly.
And it sounds like, from what you're saying, a common thread running through all of this is a lack of robust financial planning.
Yeah,
Like not having that clear, consistent understanding of where the money's actually going.
you got it. That's precisely it. Without a really well-defined system for tracking both your income and your expenditures,
Yeah.
it's incredibly difficult to anticipate potential cash flow shortfalls.
Oh, okay.
You know, it's like navigating without a map, without a GPS. You
Yeah.
might see healthy sales numbers, which is great.
Yeah.
But without that diligent monitoring of your actual cash flow, you might not see that financial iceberg looming until it's right there in front of you.
Too late to change course.
Exactly.
So it's not just about profitability then, it's
Yeah.
about understanding the timing
The timing is critical.
of when money's coming in and
Yeah.
when it's going out.
In and out, yeah.
Okay, so we're starting to get a clear picture
I hope so.
of why this is such a pervasive problem.
Mm-hmm.
But to really drive home the impact,
Right.
let's look at some real-world examples.
Okay, love that.
The sources you've shared have some really compelling stories.
Yeah.
Starting with a name I think most people will recognize.
Oh.
Toys R Us.
Ah, yes.
What happened there?
You know, it's fascinating because Toys R Us, massive retailer, huge, tons of brand recognition,
Yeah.
substantial revenue, ultimately ended up in bankruptcy
Right.
and liquidation.
It's hard to believe, really.
It
It's
is
such a part of so many childhoods.
Right.
And yet, so while factors like, changing consumer habits, shifting preferences,
Yeah.
a large debt load, those definitely played a role.
They did.
A critical, underlying issue was their struggle with cash flow.
Yeah.
Tell me more about that.
Well, they had these very high operational costs
Okay.
associated with, maintaining all these enormous retail locations.
Yeah, those were huge spaces.
They were, and they
Mhm.
had a lot of them.
Mhm.
And on top of that, their inventory turnover was slow,
Oh.
particularly outside of those peak holiday seasons.
see, yeah.
So this all resulted in this constant strain
Mhm.
on their cash reserves,
Right.
which made it really difficult for them to adapt to changing market conditions.
Right, so as things changed, they couldn't keep up.
They couldn't keep up, and ultimately that led to their demise.
Wow, it's a real reminder
It is.
that even established giants
Yeah.
aren't immune.
Nobody is immune to cash flow problems.
Nobody is immune to cash flow problem.
If you don't manage it, it will manage you.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
And then we have a very different and honestly tragic story
Mm.
of Theranos.
Yeah, completely different.
Obviously, the core issue there was fraudulent practices.
Right. Absolutely.
But it seems like cash flow mismanagement really exacerbated their downfall.
It did.
How so?
Well, even with all of the investor capital they secured,
Right, which was a lot.
it was a lot of money.
Yeah.
They just fundamentally could not generate sustainable revenue,
Right.
which meant they were constantly burning through cash and at an alarming rate.
Right, because the product wasn't actually working.
It wasn't not as claimed.
Not as claimed, right?
Right.
So that rapid expenditure,
Yeah.
coupled with the lack of a viable product,
Mm-hmm.
left them completely reliant on getting more and more investment.
Yeah, just to keep the lights on,
Wow.
just to cover the most basic operating costs.
And then, of course, once the fraud was exposed,
Right.
the investment dried up.
Immediately.
And the lack of positive cash flow, well, it meant their collapse was swift.
It was inevitable at that point.
Yeah.
It really highlights how even a company with tons of funding needs a clear path to actually generate more cash than it spends.
Right. It can't just be about burning through investor money.
It can't. It has to be sustainable.
And then to bring it to a scale that I think is a lot more relatable for many people,
Yeah.
we have the example of Jane Doe and her boutique coffee shop.
Oh, Jane Doe.
This really illustrates how cash flow issues can impact even seemingly viable small businesses.
Yeah, this is such a common scenario, unfortunately.
Really?
Yeah.
So what happened with Jane?
Well, Jane, she invested a lot. She put a lot of her own money into creating this beautiful space, a great atmosphere, building a strong brand for her coffee shop.
Right.
And during those busy summer months, her sales were good.
Okay.
And on paper, looking at the numbers, her business looked profitable. But the problem was she didn't fully anticipate the natural decline in foot traffic that happens during the colder winter months.
Right. Seasonality, yeah.
Seasonality, exactly.
It's a real factor for a lot of businesses.
It is. It is.
So that dip in revenue,
Yeah.
it left her without enough of a cash reserve
Right.
to cover those fixed costs.
Like rent, payroll.
Rent, payroll, things like that.
Exactly. Those keep coming, whether it's summer or winter.
It's true.
It doesn't matter how good your coffee is.
So despite having a business model that was profitable during part of the year,
Right. That's the key.
a lack of consistent cash flow throughout the entire year,
Yeah.
it forced her to close down.
And that's the tragedy,
Yeah, it's heartbreaking.
It is, because she had a good business.
It was a good business,
In a way.
but not well managed.
But not well managed from a cash flow perspective.
And that's the key takeaway here, isn't it?
It is. It is.
These examples really bring this concept
Yeah.
of cash flow mismanagement into focus.
I hope so.
I think it's clear from these stories
Right.
that having a great idea, even strong sales, just isn't enough.
It's not.
You have to be actively managing the money coming in, the money going out.
The timing is crucial.
Otherwise, you're on shaky ground.
Very shaky ground.
So let's pivot then.
Okay. I like
So
that.
solutions.
Yeah.
What concrete strategies
What can people actually do?
can businesses implement to get a handle on this, to avoid these pitfalls?
Yeah.
Your insights from these sources are invaluable here.
Well, I'm happy to share what I've learned.
Okay, so what's the first step?
Well, the very first, and I would argue the most crucial step,
Okay.
is to implement rigorous cash flow forecasting.
Okay, so tell me about that.
So this involves creating really detailed projections of all your anticipated income and all your anticipated expenses.
Okay.
And ideally, you're doing this not just annually, but on a monthly or even weekly basis.
Oh, yeah, so really staying on top of it.
You got to stay on top of it, yeah.
Okay.
And it's not just about looking backward at what you've already spent. It's about looking forward,
Okay.
anticipating potential shortfalls before they happen.
Right, so you're not caught off guard.
Exactly. Exactly.
And I'm assuming there are tools available now that make this a little bit less daunting than it might sound.
There are.
It's not just about those, like, complex spreadsheets anymore.
Right.
Although this can still be useful.
They can be in the right hands.
And there's software now to help with this.
There is, sophisticated accounting software like QuickBooks, Xero. These are designed to track your financial data in real time.
Oh, wow.
And generate those insightful cash flow forecasts.
That's amazing.
It is. It is.
So it takes some of the guesswork out of it, I guess.
It can. It can.
But even a well-structured spreadsheet, you're saying, can be a powerful tool.
Absolutely, if it's used consistently.
Right. Consistently, that's the key.
Consistency is key with all of this.
Got it.
But the key action step, and this is what all the sources emphasize, is to dedicate regular time.
Okay.
Scheduled time each week, doesn't have to be a lot, to actually sit down and review your cash flow statement, review your forecasts, look for patterns.
Patterns like what?
Well, are certain clients consistently paying late?
Oh.
Are your energy bills showing an unexpected upward trend?
Right.
Things like that.
So it's about looking for those red flags before they become major problems.
Exactly.
So proactive monitoring
Yes.
allows you to identify potential problems early,
Really.
giving you that time to implement corrective measures
Right.
before they escalate into full-blown crises.
Absolutely.
That makes sense.
It's about being in the driver's seat,
Yeah,
not letting the cash flow drive you.
that proactive element seems key.
It is. It is.
Another strategy, and this seems pretty straightforward,
Mm-hmm.
but I can see how it would have a big impact, is negotiating better payment terms,
Right.
both with your customer
yes.
and your suppliers.
On both sides.
Okay.
It's a two-pronged approach.
Okay, so on the customer side,
Yeah.
what can people do?
Well, consider incentivizing faster payments.
Right.
Offer a small discount for early payment.
Okay, like how?
Well, a classic example is what they call 210 net 30,
Okay.
where the customer gets a 2% discount.
Oh, okay.
If they pay within 10 days instead of the full 30 days,
Okay.
that can significantly improve your cash inflow timeline.
Okay.
And on the other side, don't overlook the opportunity to negotiate extended payment terms with your suppliers.
Ah, okay, so stretching it out on the other end.
Stretching it out, yeah.
Okay.
If you can stretch out the time you have to pay your bills
Yeah.
without incurring penalties, of course,
Right.
it can really free up crucial working capital.
Working capital, and that's
That's the money you have available for day-to-day operations.
got it.
So it gives you more breathing room.
More breathing room, more flexibility.
Exactly.
One of the sources actually gave a great example of this.
Oh, yeah.
A construction firm that used that early payment discount,
Mm-hmm.
and they dramatically reduced their outstanding receivables.
It can be very effective.
So it's just a small adjustment,
It is.
but it can have a big ripple effect.
Big ripple effect, yeah.
That's great.
It is.
What's the next piece of the puzzle then?
Okay, so the next crucial piece
Yeah.
is building a robust emergency fund.
Oh.
Think of it as a financial cushion for your business,
Okay.
designed to absorb those unexpected shocks that we were talking about earlier.
Right. Those curveballs.
Exactly, exactly.
Okay.
And the general recommendation from the experts is to maintain a reserve equivalent to 3 to 6 months
Wow.
of your core operating expenses.
That might sound like a significant amount of capital to set aside,
It might. It might.
especially for a small business, a startup.
Yeah, but when you consider the potential
Yeah.
for those unforeseen events
Right.
to derail even a profitable business, it starts to make a lot of sense.
It does. Yeah. That peace of mind.
The peace of mind is invaluable.
And you used an interesting example earlier.
Yeah.
Restaurants during COVID.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that was a real world stress test.
It was.
For so many businesses.
So many businesses. Yeah.
And those that had built up those emergency funds,
Yeah.
they were far more likely to weather those sudden lockdowns,
Right.
to survive that initial downturn,
Yeah. They had the resources to adapt.
compared to those that were operating on thin margins
Right. With no cushion.
with no cushion.
Right.
And so that financial buffer,
Mm-hmm.
it gave them that crucial time
Right.
to pivot, to adapt.
To figure out a new way forward.
And for some, it meant the difference between surviving
Yeah.
and not.
Absolutely.
Another really interesting strategy that you highlighted
Mm-hmm.
is the importance of diversifying revenue streams.
Oh, that's a big one.
Yeah.
It is.
Avoiding that reliance on a single
Right.
product service
Mhm.
or even a small number of clients.
You got it.
So why is that so important?
Well, if your business is heavily reliant on one primary source of income,
Yeah.
you become incredibly vulnerable to fluctuations in that specific market,
Right.
or even just the loss of one key client.
Right. So if that one thing goes away,
Yeah,
your whole business is in jeopardy.
exactly.
So by exploring complementary offerings,
Yeah.
entering new markets,
Mhm.
forging strategic partnerships,
Right.
you can create a more stable and predictable income stream,
Exactly.
making you less susceptible to downturns.
Yes, in any one area.
And, the classic example of this is, of course, Amazon.
Oh, Amazon.
They
yeah.
started as an online bookstore.
That's right, just books.
And now,
Now they're everything.
well, they're everything. But their diversification into cloud computing
Right.
with AWS
AWS.
has become massive,
Yeah.
incredibly profitable.
For sure.
It really provides a counterweight to the fluctuations that can happen in their retail operations.
Absolutely. It's a brilliant example of diversification.
It is.
It really is.
What other actionable steps can businesses take?
Well, automating your accounts receivable processes.
Okay.
This can be a real game changer,
In what way?
particularly when it comes to minimizing the impact of those late payments.
Yeah, those are a pain.
They are.
I mean, chasing down overdue invoices,
Uh-huh.
it's a real time sink.
It
a
is.
source of frustration for so many business owners.
Yeah, and it takes you away from doing what you should be doing.
Right, building the business.
Building the business, exactly.
Not chasing down money?
Not chasing down money, yeah.
So what can they do?
Well, implementing automated invoicing systems that send out those timely reminders and follow-ups.
Right.
This can dramatically improve your collection rates and shorten the time it takes to get paid.
So it's like having an extra set of hands.
In a way, yeah.
Without having to actually hire anyone.
Right.
And there are platforms that do this.
Oh, yeah, there are.
You mentioned some earlier.
Yeah, platforms like FreshBooks, Zoho Invoice.
Right.
These offer these kinds of features.
Okay.
So they streamline that entire billing and collection process.
Right, taking it off your plate.
Taking it off your plate and freeing up your time and resources.
And then you can focus on what matters.
Exactly.
And finally, for startups and rapidly growing businesses,
right,
the sources really emphasize the importance of monitoring their burn rate.
Ah, yes, burn rate.
Which is a term we hear a lot.
We do, especially in the startup world.
But it's relevant, really, for any business.
It is for any business that's spending capital.
That's spending money.
Spending money, exactly.
So remind us, what is burn rate?
Burn rate is simply the rate at which a company is spending its cash reserves.
Okay.
So for startups in particular, it's crucial to track this carefully and make sure that their spending is aligned with their runway.
And runway being?
Runway is the amount of time that their current cash reserves will last at their current burn rate.
Okay.
So if you're burning through cash really quickly,
yeah,
your runway is going to be very short.
Right. You're going to run out of money quickly.
Exactly.
If you're more conservative.
Yeah.
Stretching it out.
You have more time.
You do more time.
To get to profitability.
To get to profitability.
To figure things out.
Makes sense.
It does. It does.
And there's a classic book recommendation here.
There is.
The Lean Startup.
By Eric Ries. Yeah.
Eric Ries. Okay.
Book.
And it provides guidance on?
Well, it really focuses on minimizing waste.
Okay.
Optimizing how you allocate your resources.
Right.
And ultimately extending that crucial runway to increase the chances of success.
Of long-term success, yeah.
Long-term sustainable success. That's the goal.
That's the goal, right? Yeah. These are all incredibly practical,
I think so.
Actionable strategies.
That's the goal.
That businesses of all sizes can implement.
Yeah, I agree.
And the resources that you've highlighted from all these sources go even deeper.
They do.
Pointing us towards some really influential books.
There's some classics.
That delve into these areas in more detail.
Yeah, it's like a curated reading list.
It is.
For building a financially healthy business.
I like that, yeah.
Yeah.
So let's touch on some of those.
Okay, sounds good.
So we've got Profit First.
By Mike McCullovich.
By Mike McCullovich, okay.
Yeah, he offers a really counterintuitive but powerful approach to managing your finances by prioritizing profit from the very beginning.
Interesting. So not treating it as an afterthought?
Not an afterthought.
Okay.
But the first thing you think about.
So profit first.
Profit first, yeah.
Interesting.
The real mindset shift.
And then there's the E-Myth Revisited.
By Michael E. Gerber.
Michael E. Gerber. Okay.
Yeah, this is a foundational text.
I've heard of this one.
Yeah, it explores why so many small businesses fail.
Right.
And it provides a very practical roadmap for building those scalable, sustainable operations.
So it's not just about the idea.
It's not just about the idea.
It's about building a business.